Good morning. Sean here, Mountains Garage. It's 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning. It's been a crazy week. It was hot. It was cool. A tropical storm blew through yesterday, the one that came up the East Coast. We only got a little bit of wind and a whole lot of rain. But today's going to be nice. Sunny and 70, my kind of weather. This week in Turbo 400 news, the transmission holding fixture that was in last Friday's video, I guess it was, I talked about how the price had shot up $1,000 plus the price of the device, which was $99 or $124 if you got the whole thing. I had called them. They said they were going to fix the price. They only fixed it for just the individual piece without the bench mount. I bought it, but I believe I commented back that I really wanted to buy the whole thing. But I bought for $99 again this piece. Here we are a week later. This showed up day before yesterday with a nice handwritten note apologizing for the glitch online. And they gave me the gift of the bench mount. Very nice. However, if you go on eBay today, the price a week later on all the Zamco items is still $1,000 plus the price of the individual piece. So they still have a glitch to work on. She says they're working on it. I guess if you need to buy one, you can contact them. I'm not a representative, but I like the product. Especially when I found out that Zamco USA and the country of origin listed for the holding fixture is USA. So I gotta believe it's made right here. And for $99 or $124, I can't reproduce that. Even if I could, the time and materials would be much more than that. Trust me on that one. And speaking of gifts, one of the gifts of this channel is I've become friends with people all over the country, actually a good part of every day. I'm only at 2,000 subscribers and I spend X amount of time a day answering questions and just responding to comments. And I hope to do that, regardless of how big I get, but I can see where it gets overwhelming. A lot of people complain about the big YouTubers not responding like they used to. Well, I gotta believe they're overwhelmed. I'm only at 2,000 and it's a lot. So if you had 1 million, you could never keep up. You'd have to hire people to do that, more than one. But through the channel, one of the gifts I'm friends with these people, and there's one guy named John. I won't give his full name because I didn't ask him. I didn't even tell him I was going to give him a shout out, but he's out of Missouri. And we talk almost every day, mostly about hoarding GM automatics. He, in his area, is always finding better deals and they're more reasonably priced where he is. And I guess the four-wheel drive stuff is rarer, so it's easier to do trading and stuff on 4L80s. Excuse me, whatever. Great guy. I would miss hearing from him if he stopped texting me every day. The other night, well, a few weeks ago, and several times since the time I've known him, he has hordes of LS parts as well, which, let's face it, I'm weak. I bought a cam kit and a bunch of stuff a while back, and he packages it like it's going to the moon. And shipping was expensive, but not completely outrageous. So this time around, I actually sold the one cam kit I had. It's a nice Lenati cam kit, cam and lifters, tie-bar lifters, not the lifters that have to go into the plastic tray on an LS. Good stuff. My buddy's putting together a car. They were looking for a cam and lifters. I sold them the one I had and bought another. So I got another giant box coming. I had several things shipped to me this week, and in his case, it was clear the prices have doubled, and then I actually called a business, and a box that I bought a month ago for $13 now costs $26 to send to me. In the case of all the stuff I bought from John, it was like $90 last time, and this time it was $170. But like I say, he packs a box, that thing is bomb-proof. And in the box, let's back up. Every time I go to pick up a transmission, and I suspect it might have oil in it, I have an old crimped-off dipstick full of silicone and a top hat, and I stick it in the hole because a lot of times if there's a dipstick in it, it won't clear. Like for instance, this time I was putting that Corvette transmission that I haven't stripped yet in the trunk of my Honda. and the trunk lid wasn't going to close with a dipstick in it. Unfortunately, I waited till it was in the trunk before I tried to put this in, and that thing was full. What do you do in that situation? Well, you either have something like this, or in the box with all the LS parts I bought from John, he made these. It looks like a pacifier for a baby, and that's what I nicknamed them. These are incredible. He sent me 5 of them. I mean, just the work to make, everyone's the same. He is a perfectionist, which is awesome. It looks like he took an Allen-headed bolt and maybe drilled and tapped it. Must have been a BITTH on that one, but this thing, this is a new top hat. It is perfect. So now, I mean, that's cool. And a gift. If there's enough interest in these, maybe he'll build them to sell. I won't give his full name now because I didn't even prep him that I might, turn the internet loose on him. Maybe he never doesn't want to sell them. I don't know, but that's genius. I've been working on transmissions since I was a teenager. Never once did I think to make this. So I was always somewhat happy with this. Moving on. So to finish up the story with John, he needed to call me this week and discuss the shipping charges and stuff like that. I'd never heard his voice before. We've been communicating over a year. It was kind of strange. It was nice to talk to him, but it's one of them things. Every day, I get 3 or 4 people every day that send me messages. He's the most consistent, and it's always interesting to hear from him, so it's awesome. Moving on. The purple transmission in the thumbnail, in the beginning of the video. That's what that little picture is called, the thumbnail, if you didn't know. I picked it up. It was in last Monday's video when I picked up the 360 and the 727 and a bunch of other stuff. I had to go right by the shop of a friend of mine. He actually took over the old Chevy dealer down in the village 3 miles from me. It was a long time since that's been a Chevy dealer. I never saw it as a Chevy dealer. I've lived here since 1991. It was long before that, probably in the 60s and 70s. But that particular Chevy dealer moved the next town over. They were doing fine until the buyout and restructuring that all took place way back there. Well, it seems way back now, 10 years ago or so. And they were a casualty. They lost their Chevy dealer, and they're still in business today. It's like a body shop and stuff, but it's just not the same. And it's tragic because they were a great business, local, plenty of stuff in stock, sold a lot of trucks. So I swung by there. He wanted me to pick up a Turbo 400. He pulled a 55 Chevy straight axle car out of the weeds like 3 years ago, and in 30 days also pulled his motorhome out of the weeds and drove from Maine to Bowling Green, Kentucky to the Tri-5 Nationals. He built the car in 30 days. And he's been running it around for the last 3 years. He's a great guy. He's got a whole group of buddies. They all got a car club and stuff going on. And they do, some cool stuff. He's been kind of got the racing bug, so he wanted to upgrade the transmission, so he stuck another Turbo 400 into it and gave me the purple one in the picture. He showed me the afternoon I picked it up, the bucket full of nice looking red oil. He expected nothing wrong with it. He just wanted me to go through it, and he wants to put it back in the car because they're leaving in 30 days to go to Bowling Green again. That poor motorhome's probably still sitting in the weeds too, but he just hooks the trailer to it and heads west. I get it home on my new fixture, which is going to be mentioned a few times in this video. It's awesome. Combined with this solid bench is awesome. I flip it up to drain it, and I look down at the oil, and it looks like you're mining silver with it. So I knew I was going to run into problems inside. But on the outside, this is where the weirdness started. It had, and I've only seen one of these in my entire transmission career. In the old Fairbanks catalog, they used to list a short shaft Turbo 400 in small yoke or big yoke. And I always thought that was curious because I wanted to find a small yoke one because I was really bucks down. In fact, so So bucks down that I once had a pickup truck I had to drive with a squeegee because couldn't afford a wiper motor. So here is the tail housing for one of those small yoke units. Research this week tells me it's like the first 2 years of a Cadillac Turbo 400, and it made its way into others, it said. So it's possible to either build or see a Chevy short shaft, small yoke, but it's not a Turbo 350 yoke. I tried that. And it showed up with a seal hanging out of it, all beat up, so I couldn't measure it or read the number. So I asked him, what is going on? There's no way you have a yoke, because the Turbo 400 output shaft is still in place. That would make the yoke pretty thin. And he looked at it and said, absolutely. And not only that, I grabbed another transmission, stuck it in the car, and I'm driving it, slid right in. I said, what are the chances you have 2 of these? I've only seen one my entire life. It's possible. So the rest of that afternoon, I was building the transmission. And the last thing I did is bolt this on. I was still waiting for his seal to show up, and it did, and they got me the correct seal. It's a Pioneer 759020, and it looks like a miniature version of a Turbo 400 seal. It fits the housing at 2.5 inches, and I believe the ID of the bushing's like 180. The way of tail housing's made, it's impossible to measure unless you're going to use a snap gauge, which I didn't. I actually did a little research. I asked a question on the DIY TH400 forum. In my research, I found an ad for a bushing and seal. I took the seal number, actually sent it to my buddy who is at the parts counter. He crossed it over, sent me a seal. I'm ready to reinstall it and just let him deal with whatever yoke that he has. And he sends me a message and said, I just measured the shaft in the car, had me remeasure a stock Turbo 400 yoke. Sure enough, he just had a buddy had swapped the transmission in it while they swapped the tail housing. The tail housing doesn't belong on a short shaft 400 with a 32 spline output shaft. So, mystery solved, kind of, but now I have in my possession this small bushing, small seal, short shaft, Turbo 400 output shaft. It'll be a wall hanger along with the seal because I doubt I'll ever see the rest of it, whatever shaft this had with it, to use it. But it was interesting and confusing for a short time. So when I got inside the transmission, it was obvious somebody had been in there before, and he said this transmission worked flawless and shifted awesome. It had a basically unmodified valve body with the exception of all but 2 check balls missing. At some point, in the forward drum, they had steels on steels trying to take up clearance, which sometimes people do that, or there'll be a wave and then a steel in the bottom near the piston. They did it on the top next to the pressure plate. Now, I guess you could do that, but I've never seen it done that way. The clutches were all but burnt out. Lots of hot spots, and no, there were waffles at one point, but the lines were missing on most of them, so that was about to let loose. Further down, the center support was a thin one on a Turbo 400 center support. There's 2 different thickness of the lugs. The thick one's like 370-ish, 0.370, doesn't need a fretting ring underneath. The thin one, 330 thousandths-ish, you can look it up, needs a fretting ring underneath. I am sure this transmission had a thick, it's an early metal vent Turbo 400. The tag is missing, but it's definitely an early one, early-ish, probably 67 or 8 maybe. Probably had a thick center support, and it got changed for whatever reason. Also missing was the aluminum piston. It had a steel piston in it. Had aluminum pistons in the drums. They installed it without the fretting ring, the thin replacement center support. That could have been destruction on the case, because if you think about it, the only holding the center support now, I mean, the snap ring, the bevel snap ring is keeping it from going forward, but nothing's keeping it from going back other than the bolt. The case was okay. The center support, not so much. And I don't know what occurred first. The bearing that rides right on the back is in multiple pieces. I never found all the little needles, which is always difficult when you're building a transmission. Just from sitting here, I found 3 more. One that's all beat up. Well, it destroyed the back of the center support, so I had to get another one. So that was the cause of all the metal between the bearing and things crashing into each other. What turned into a stock rebuild actually became easier for me because he was kind of curious about a transmission brake. Next thing you know, I'm building my standard unit with all the good stuff. It was a good start. It had the right drum, just had the wrong sprag. It had a 16 element sprag, so we upgraded that. I put a brake in it, all good clutches, a different center support, and it's all back together. And I did this one a little different. Doing the same transmission all the time could get boring unless you mix it up. In this case, I stripped it. Had to, of course, talk to the customer, even though he's a buddy of mine. Things cost money, so I'm not going to do anything without his okay. And you got to estimate prices, all that stuff that, you know, I just soon avoid. I just want to work on the transmission, but I'm a one-guy show, so I got to handle it all. I stripped it, and the case had a layer of purple on it. And then it had Detroit diesel green. If you're familiar with a 2-stroke Detroit, you know what color I'm talking about. Under that was orange. Under that was silver. So, and the case looked pretty good in purple. My thoughts was I'm just going to stick it in my parts washer for just a few minutes, and I'll hand clean the rest of it after I do some modifications to the case that I normally do on a, 1,000 horsepower build. Well, in 1 or 2 minutes in the parts washer, the purple half came off, the green half came off. It was a mess. I washed that thing 4 times, scraped some more, washed, scraped. The paint came out okay. This stuff actually smells like grape. It may be a mental thing, but I enjoyed painting with this probably too much. Yeah. So anyway, I built all the sub-assemblies while I was messing with the case because the case was just, really being a pain. And sometimes it's fun to just numb out, and it makes for assembly really fast because I'm going to put a little quick video in there showing you what I use for the intermediate snap ring and case saver. But you got to mix it up. So in this case, I had all the sub-assemblies built, pump modified. I had the brakes, so I had the right springs in the direct drum. I had the new pressure regulator spring and whatnot in there. And then I dealt with the case and got it painted and then just slapped it together. So it worked out pretty well. Pausing partway through to show you a little detail on Goofy Grape here. I was a good boy. I built all my sub-assemblies, cleaned and painted the case, and now it's the fun part, assembly. In this transmission, I'm putting in a CK Performance, just a first gear leave trans brake valve body. This is their heavy duty snap ring it comes with. It's a solid piece, and I also bought their little case saver. And this is a really good unit. You'll see no deflection. I'll do that one more time. I like it, works good. It has a special Allen head bolt. I do put a little clear RTV on the shoulder and under the head, and then wipe it off when I'm done. I'm always afraid of silly leaks, and in this case, that would be impossible to fix in the cab because you would drop the inside piece. So, I don't want it to leak. There was one point where I was washing the case. I had all the sub-assemblies done and out of the way. I took one of those heavy-duty Pontiac Turbo 400 cases, put it in my new super solid fixture on my super solid bench. Now I do fab work on this end of the shop. I've never had a good transmission holder down here. The first Zamco one that I bought is down on the other bench, and I could move it down here, but I never have. Never gave it a thought. Every time I've cut a bell housing off to install an Ultra Bell, or in this case it's going to be an ATI, I chase this thing around the bench, or I vice grip it to the bench. So I'm in between washing that case and I'm staring at the Pontiac case on the ground. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to cut the bell housing off that. But I'm going to put it in the fixture. So I put it in the fixture, and this time I did use the 1/2-inch pin. I've been using the T-handle. It works awesome. But with the pin and the transmission laying this way, I'm going to show you some pitches. I marked out and cut off the bell housing in 4 minutes. Now, I still got to do some final grinding, but it was awesome. It sticks out beyond the bench. I can get to both sides with the hacksaw. The funny part is there's a mill behind me. A lot of people use that to cut off and modify the transmissions. There's a plasma cutter over there. I recently read that a guy uses a plasma cutter to rough cut the bell housing. I tell you what, 4 minutes with my little cordless hacksaw, I might not change my method. I was curious about trying different methods, but 4 minutes, you can't beat it. So I'm going to show a few pitches there. The heavy-duty Pontiac 400 is thicker. In fact, I'm going to measure it when I come back. The Chevy case was 140 thousandths. I'll be right back. Depending on where you measure the Pontiac case in the same area where I cut, the Chevy was 140 thousandths. This is 250. And that's in the thinnest spot I could find. That case is substantially stronger than any Chevy case ever made. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to save any one of the 3 that I stripped. This is my best candidate, and I'm hoping for the best. So in between stuff, I chuck it back in the fixture. It only takes seconds. I don't even take the fixture out of the holder. I just hold it in there and twist in the threaded rods, as long as it's not a whole transmission. The whole transmission, I mentioned I pick it up with an axle strap. You tie your vehicle down to a trailer, and I use my engine crane, and I'm still pioneering and looking for an easy way, either hydraulic lift table or an overhead situation with a crane and a chain fall, because I'm tired of picking them up. I don't mind. I can take it out of the fixture, set it on the bench. I can grab it from the bench and walk it out and put it in my vehicle. If you're at waist high, you're not bending over with it. Again, I used to not think twice about it. I could curl it. I probably still can. But I don't want to. The damn things are getting heavier every year. So I'm going to throw a few pitches in of me whacking the bell housing off and marking it. I mark it at the pan rail, straight across with a straight edge. And I cut down through the pan rail. And I turn back in toward the pump, eyeball it, and turn back straight. And I want to go right down past the 3 lugs. And I stop in the center. Do the same thing on the other side. Just one little sway and then right down and meet up with the other one. And it's slick. This time I did spray some of this along the line where I was going to be cutting, and it, if nothing else, kept the stuff from shooting everywhere, the aluminum sawdust. And I gotta believe it's easier on the blade. So that went super slick. Well, I got to get back to cleaning. Thanks for following along. Who knows what this week will bring? It'll probably bring 2 videos. That's about my average. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. It really helps out. We're slowly growing, which is awesome. I hope you have a great week. Enjoy the weather. It's going to be a great weekend. Catch you later.